Professor Ransford Gyampo, a professor in political science at University of Legon, that is University of Ghana, Legon. Already in Simbi Atuga, na ensema prof Kenya ni se ebeya Parliament of Ghana titire any minority no omu engu ahomboaso kese omu nyire omu na omu nhyase the process of impeaching Yura President Akuffo Addo. Na ninsem okan na ni se enka okwa akoyese Yura President Akuffo Addo emfa parliament omu nsem bia enye hwe enti se ti samondia na kese owura no ewo se omu yeden etu na de so na parliament minority titire ni minority no omu enhye process no ase ententem se be ya president no ebe nso omu ani abre. Professor Gyampo eyobia na Yura bra Yura NDC for John Dramani Mahama omu wa aban mu no owura no na okasapa. Yes, owura no na okasa enti na medwen se sebi wagisika wo baby anase wonya dododie bi adi ti se Reverend Martin ma na yenti omu kan biwi ena ama papa yi ekasasa na mbom sana papa ni obi a opega na yi papa ni obi a opo minasem watiase enti no okana adwen ema omamuni nyina the same thing ena aban change Akuffo Addo betina so papa yi atimi akana adwen ana okana adwen bre eni abrebia ofili se eniema enkoyi ewo MPP amanyuko ni mu papa yi obi a okana adwen papa yi obi a sebi eburu sebi nyado okire na adwen ankasa obobo na adwen atiase Akuffo Addo who say yes or no so a professor in political science and as in bio bekambianso a exceptional. He is one of the few people in Ghana, and that is the few professors in Ghana. Their professors, and I said their professor title, no, it is very useful to me because your professors will be your reverend, your doctors will be omudibiano, omu edi eyeden, omu edi propaganda, and I say omu edi ebibi efri aban bi ho. What I say, son of Quarpa, Becan, Quaraba, one time Becan, Quaradi, Debida, Amundi say, man. I was young, Prof. Gyampo, I can see me be OTV3, Mepese Boko, Yakuti, and Sama, Prof. Gyampo, or the Etu Idra, Yankuti, and Sama Emra.
And so, in the process, everything I want to see after you. There's somebody speaking after you. Everything I want to say, I always say. No, but you see, I like the angle that Honorable Mahama Yarega took was when I got up at dawn and I was thinking about the issue. So, the same angle that I took. This is a pure showdown between the legislature and the executive arm of government. What is happening is unprecedented in the history of Ghana's Fourth Republic, and it is simply because we also haven't had a hung parliament before. Now, the Afia Makpo was within his right to send whatever he thought he needed a judicial interpretation to courts. And but I'm saying that the boldness with which he did what he's done arose as a result of we operating a hung parliament or a near hung parliament. The Supreme Court may have thrown the application out, but I dare say that it is not a marching up to Parliament to do the bidding of the executive president. The fact that the matter has been thrown out does not automatically mean that so Parliament has been given a marching order to to act on the ministerial nominees of the president. Parliament is a master of its own processes in every democratic dispensation. And a hung parliament, particularly with the demise of John Kuma, can be a democratic superman in frustrating the executive president if it wants to do so. It can be a democratic superman in frustrating the executive president if it feels that consistently the executive president is disregarding its powers and its authority. I mean, why do we have a serial refusal on the part of the president to append signatures to bills? The last time I heard the minority leader saying that we shouldn't be surprised if they initiate impeachment proceedings against the president. Why not? Let them go ahead. They may not win, but it will go down in the history that for the first time in the history of Ghana's Fourth Republic, a certain president, suffered this. There was an attempt to impeach him, even if because of excessive partisanship. People, his own MPs will speak behind the scenes against him, and yet when it gets public, they would chicken out. Even if that happens, he will go down in history as someone who was almost impeached. You see, in locating sovereignty, I will tell you that Parliament is superior to the executive in trying to locate sovereignty, because not all of us voted for President Akuffo Addo, but every Ghanaian is represented on the floor of Parliament. And so Parliament essentially represents the people. Whereas when it comes to president, it's only a section, 50% plus one, who elected the president. And so, if the president decides, if Parliament decides that it would work against the president, then president may not be able to stand it, especially if it's a hung parliament. Now you've also lost one of your members of parliament. If they decide to fight against you, it is going to be difficult for the executive president. And I am surprised that up till now, you see, we are used to winning elections and dominating on the floor of parliament. That's what the executive presidents over the years have been used. So it appears it's being difficult for President Akuffo Addo to appreciate what time is it. It is not the kind of parliament that can be always relied upon to rubber stamp your decision, but especially if you have a speaker of parliament who doesn't come from your party and you have a hung parliament. You cannot bulldoze. Yes, sometimes because the executive control resources, you can be able to use resources to influence and to circumvent processes and to do all manner of things to keep parliament in line. But if a hung parliament, it gets to a point in time and they say that, look, this is what we have all decided on. We want you to append your signature. If you decide to want that bill was bipartisan. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was super bipartisan. Yes. Okay, so if you get a president who wants to swim against the tide, and a president who wants to mortgage our humanity and cultural values just for $3 billion, you see, we are who we are because of the values and what we believe in. Okay, we are who we are because of the values and what we believe in. And so Parliament sat down to decide. And this is not the first time. Mr. President, I think that, you see, disregarding the general will, the hopes and aspirations of Ghanaians, simply because one is exiting from power, should make it difficult for the MPP to go campaign in the coming election, especially when the very people you are going to seek, their mandates, the same people are having their general will being undermined by the president. You see, we may have we may have differences, but you see this LGBT thing and the posturing about it, you can see that virtually the generality of the Ghanaian populace are against it. And these are the people who have spoken through their members of parliament. How do you try to undermine the general will of the people at a time when your party is also out there trying to appeal to this generality, the general conscience or the general populace, to give them the mandate to be able to break the eight? It is going to be difficult. I don't see how, and I don't know whether people within the MPP are thinking about this. This is a general will of the people. You are going to be appealing to the general population to give you another mandate. Now you have a president who is exiting, and because he's leaving, he doesn't care. So he's running contrary to the general will of the people. Yet you want to appeal to the same people. I think that if they are bold people within the MPP, they must begin to think about how they will be able to rescue their party from the claws of the exiting Akuffo Addo. Again, as a nation, we must find a way. We must think about legislating against what I call presidential debt gootism. Presidential debt gootism. When the president is exiting and he doesn't care about anything, and so he decides to throw cautions to the wind, he decides that, look, I can mortgage your values and your traditions and your belief system for 3 billion.
I was young, yes, indeed, Prof. Gyampo and I would Mesra say Adawroma me pacho Mr. Wada, but modern like it modino na enko and what you see the more be like na enko be bit me any information. Okay, and some prof kana or do so or can or potokase but utie ni dia who say prof is making a whole lot of sense what you see because of say we Akuffo Addo kunti ne nima bepi on ma papa no yi nani e de ama o man konkono Ghana say be you see enyu on fa ho but ono de on pese odine ho begim because of say or is it but he is the same person so I will appeal to Ghana for say ntoaba emfama yewura baumia we ensema Prof Gyampo so obaba yenti ensema Prof Gyampo eka editor so mesre wada but modern na fa comment to na subscribe to the channel no say be ya dwumadi bi e beto so no so betimi enya bi eti yento aso.
How do we treat that president? We should have a legislation to provide for impeachment. Where the constitution provides for impeachment, but sometimes it becomes difficult because you don't have that kind. You are not sure whether you will be able to marshal, support from Parliament. Like I said, they would gossip to you behind the scenes, but publicly, that is who we are. And so you see, I call on the churches, I call on civil society organizations, identifiable groups, to begin to speak against the attempt by the exiting president to torpedo the general will of the people. I disagree respectfully with those who are speaking in support of the presidential hypocrisy and insincerity in attempting to show a certain respect for judicial independence and judicial autonomy. Suddenly the president is telling Ghanaians that, look, I have a lot of respect for judicial independence. So if a matter is sub judice, if a matter is before somebody has taken a matter to the court, I'm not willing to act. But this president has acted on matters that have been in court before. And so I see the show of a certain respect for judicial independence and judicial autonomy as insincere and hypocrisy. And then again, matters before the court, in my view, should not immobilize the president and make him ineffective in implementing a decision taken by the generality of the citizenry. Because there is something before the court, all of a sudden we should wait. And we know how sometimes the court processes can drag. And so if a president has to take a decision, somebody tells you that, look, it is before court. And so all of us, we should be in limbo. In political science, we teach what we call judicial review. What is the essence of judicial review? It's the power given to the courts to take a second look at laws made by parliament or actions of the executive to declare them ultra vires, null and void, unconstitutional or illegal. After the action has taken place, the concept of judicial review empowers the judges to look at it again and say, hey, maybe he who is cutting the path does not know his back is crooked. This particular legislation is unconstitutional. This action of the president is null and void, or it violates the constitution, is ultra vires or something. So they are there. So for me, for a president to say, no, I'm not going to act. I'm going to wait till Parliament, the matter is decided by the courts. How about if it delays in perpetuity? As we know, matters have been there and they have delayed. It creates an impression that the president is trying to outsmart the people of Ghana. But Mr. President, we have seen through what you are doing. You want to hide behind the processes to circumvent and to undermine the expression of the general will of the people, simply because you are exiting and you don't care. Posterity will charge you. Now let's talk about the judges in this case. You see, oftentimes when it comes to the judiciary, yes, we are overly cautious, and the lawyers here would always be frightening us and saying all manner of things. But you see, yeah, we have a history. I don't want to remind us. We have a history of judges doing their work, professional work, and yet being abducted and killed. It's happened in Ghana before. Judges, they were doing their work. They were not doing anything illegal. But the legal work that they are doing, the professional work that they were doing, others interpreted their work as being in contrast with the expression of the general will of the people. And so they were abducted and they were gruesomely murdered. It appears that the whole country, we have decided that this should never happen again. And I believe in that kind of resolve, that never should it happen again, that judges will be doing their work, and some people will say, well, what you are doing does not reflect the general will of the people, and so then we want to deal with you in a particular way. It should never happen. But our resolve not to repeat the dastard past should not be licentious for judicial tyranny and judicial unaccountability. We don't want to go back to the past. But it doesn't mean that judges should be untouchable, they should not be accountable. It doesn't mean we should license judicial tyranny. Yes, Godfred Dami may have applied for expedited judgment on this matter. And so, in business management, there was LIFO, last in, first out. Okay. Now, in trying to grant this last in, first out thing, the judges should have known that certainly this will create a certain perception of bias in the psyche of the teeming people who are ignorant. How many people know that there can be last in, first out? You can write and the judge would decide that, look, let me hear this matter first, even though we've had one and it's lying down. See, you create a certain perception in the psyche of the people that you are being biased. Even though that perception is not grounded in law. Sometimes it's perception that caused. So when the judges were abducted, it was perception in the minds of some people that were not doing things in line with the general will of the people. And so my argument is that if there is judicial accountability, the application of the law by judges must be done such a way that it also respects the moods and sensibilities of the people. I undertook a course called Judicial Politics in the US, and I remember Professor Kent Potney narrating a certain attitude of a US Supreme Court to us. He said, that judge always wants to be with the law. He always wants to be with the law. All that he does is that, look, he speaks, he eats the law. And so because of that, this judge, he lives very far away from people. Okay? He does not read newspapers. He doesn't watch television. He doesn't listen to news. Why? He doesn't want what is happening within society to influence him. But in that course, Professor Ketley and the whole class, they criticized the judge because they said that it is the role of the judiciary must always not be confined to law, but you must also be mindful of public policy. You must also be mindful of public mood and sensibility. We are not saying that let that overly sway you, but you should find a certain nice balance between the application of law in a manner that respects the mood and sensibilities, of the people. And so we argued that rigid application of laws without thinking about public mood and sensibilities is a threat to judicial independence and also ushers people sitting as judges into a regime of robots. We must be able to apply the laws. We must be able to respect the judicial processes. But in doing so, I call on judges to also be mindful of the perception that they are building about themselves. Okay, because look, you would appreciate the role of the judiciary and their importance when you cast your mind back to our 2013 election petition process. It was the judges, it was the judiciary that held the fort, that kept us together. And so I am not interested in doing anything, and I'm not interested in supporting anybody in saying things that undermines the image of the judges. But at the same time, they also have a responsibility to do things that would protect them and the institution that they work in. They have a responsibility to offer judgments that respects the moods and sensibilities of the people, so that they would deliberately be doing things to cut or to reduce the negative perceptions of bias, against them. If they decide that, look, as for us, we do not care about what the public says. Sometimes you hear the judges and you hear some of the lawyers say it's not about what you think, it's not about what you know, it's just about law. I'm saying that if you are always talking about law, and then you are disregarding, you are behaving as if you do not live in the society, and so you don't care about the moods and sensibilities of the people, then you are what your conduct itself will remain an affront to the quest to shore up judicial independence, because it will be in the psyche of people that you are biased. The more people think you are biased, the more you are, the more you become, and then the more there is an affront to the notion of judicial independence. And
Abusinya Prof Gyampo ena wakasa no yes inti Prof Gyampo uti na na analysis a o making na no in a constructive manner. What you say Prof will be on criticize only MPP and as only NDC ono dia bansi san of release enyema nkoyia Prof Gyampo eba abontin no nso abekire na adwen in a professional way inti Prof Gyampo waya de papa to giving us such a brilliant ideas from him. Nakupon Asia Prof. What you say, managing he's one of the gentlemen in this land or Mokano Quarano. Abusia, shall I be all comment session in Macau? Bye bye.